Hi guys, Samantha from JCMO Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you how to create a cute flower cane. So to start with, you're going to need some clay, and I'm using Kato polymer clay today, but you can use Primo. And I'm using a nice strong blue with some white. And I'm just going to cut these rectangles into triangles, like so. And then I will just stack them, like so. And then join them together, like so. And because we're doing a cane, I would recommend using a fair amount of clay. So for each colour in the Skinner blend, I've used about a half a block of Kato. Now another thing I'm going to point out also is, since Kato is a little bit firm, I'm using the colour for Kato because I like the colours for Kato when it comes to canes better, but I am using Primo White just so that we can soften up, and the two work together very nicely. So now I'm going to turn that into a Skinner blend. If you don't know how to do a Skinner blend, please take a look at my YouTube channel or my website. Just type into the search Skinner blend and it will come up. Okay, and there we go, that's your Skinner blend. So now what we want to do is, this Skinner blend is too wide this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold this in half, and I'm going to fold it in half again. Okay, that way it gives me something nice and firm to work with rather than it just being a really flimsy sheet. Now what we're going to do is you're going to squeeze on the sides like so, and then you can use your roller, then you squeeze on the sides, and this way we're going to shorten that blend, and then roll again and just continue doing that like so. There we go. So you can see that we have shortened the blend quite considerably. And now what we're going to do is we're going to run it through a pasta machine from one short end to the other, lengthening it. Okay, and so you can see here that we've lengthened that quite a bit. So now I want you to just grab your blade and just trim up these ends, just so that you have a nice clean end on each side. Then I'm just going to put that to the side, and we're going to work on our next blend. Okay, and for that I've got Kato purple along with some white again. So again, I'm just going to create a triangle out of both, and you are going to do a blend pretty much the exact same way as last time, just don't go through the shortening of the blend part. Okay, and there we go. So now I'm going to take that and I'm going to fold this one in half as well. And this time we're going to do the opposite of the last one, in that we are actually going to lengthen it. So I'm going to run it from one shorter end to the other shorter end, lengthening out the blend. Okay, and then again we've got a nice long blend. So we are going to start from the white end, and we are just going to curl that in, and then we're going to just roll up the length of our blend, like so. And just try to do it nice and tight so that you don't get fingerprints. Okay, and there we go, got a nice beautiful plug. Then I am going to reduce this down a fair amount. And actually, before I reduce it down, I want to just grab some black clay, and we are going to wrap that around this. Okay. Then I am just going to take that, and we're just going to trim it up. So, Okay, and then just trim it to size. And then wrap that up, trim the end, like so. There we go. Then we are going to reduce it down. And now the reason that I've wrapped black around it is because we are going to put this inside of our petal shape, and we're going to have like little stems attached to it, and these stems are going to have a black in it, so I want it to match. You'll see what I mean as I go on. So just continue to reduce it. Okay, and there we go. So you can see it's quite small. So put that to the side, and I'm going to work on the stems now. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to take this black, and I'm just going to trim it. So. And I'm going to trim one end and trim the other end. Then we'll grab our white, and I'll also trim that. Okay. I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to put it onto the white. Then we'll trim away the excess. Okay, and the black and white that I am working with in this project is all primer, just so you know. It's just the colour that I'm using Kato for. There we go. We've got that. Then I'm just going to gently pinch these ends, and I actually need to trim them just so that they're nice and clean. There we go, like so. And trim the ends again so that they're nice and clean as well. And then we're going to run that through the pasta machine again, making it about the same thickness as one of these would be. But run it through so that you, from one short end to the other short end. Okay, and there we go. And just trim those ends again. And then we have all the components that we need to begin assembling. So I'll just put this to the side for the moment. I'm just going to bring this over. Alright, and I'm just deciding what the next step is. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to cut these intersections, and we're going to cut them all the same length, and this is what's going to this is what the length of our cane is going to be. Okay, so just do that. Then once you've done that, we are going to do the same for our bullseye canes. We're just going to take that, and I'm just going to roll it a teeny bit smaller. Okay. And I want you to roll them the same length as your strips. Okay, then I've put those to the side, and we can now start assembling our cane. So I'm just grabbing this, and I'm just putting this down this way so that it's out the way. There we go. Okay, and then for the first one, we're going to grab this. And actually it's supposed to be this way around. I'm just going to lay that on the bottom, the light bottom path. Then I'm going to take one of these and I'm going to put that in. And I am going to cut. Okay. And actually it might make it easier for us to just cut the skinner blend to start with. But what we're going to do is we're going to cut the skinner blend, and then you're going to take it and you're going to wrap it over the top. Then we're going to cut another piece and I'll put that over the top and grab another one of these. And I'm actually going to make this one a little shorter, so I'll just cut off that end. Oops. I'm going to put that there and that there, and if it goes off the edge we can trim that off later on. And pop that over the top again, and then you'll just continue doing that until you run out of skinner blend. Okay, and that is what you should have. So then I'm just going to go in and I'm going to just trim away that excess. Top's fine, but I wanted to clean that bit up. And then we're just going to start pinching this together into a rectangle. And that should not take too much to do. So I use my hands at first, and then I will bring over an acrylic rod. Okay, and we'll just get that into a somewhat rectangular shape, like so. Okay. Then I am going to start pinching the bottom in on itself because we are going to be making a petal shape. So just curling it in and around, like so. Okay. Like so. There we go. So that will have curled in the bottom, and I'm just busy pressing on that. And then we're just going to start forming into a triangular shape, like so. Okay, and while you're doing that, start reducing. Okay, and go nice and slow while you're doing that. You can press on these edges to help some parts not move any quicker than others, but just generally start reducing it. Okay, and then when you've got it reduced decently, press on the top part of the petal to squish in those corners and to get a rounded effect. You can continue pushing on the bottom, but generally it's better to lay it on its side and press down on the bottom to keep its peak, and then just begin rounding out this top area so you get a nice round petal shape. Okay, and I don't want to reduce it too much further than that because we're not going to be packing this cane, we're going to be working with the petal as it is. So I cut that, and it's warm so it might smudge, so that you can see it did smudge. That's fine. There, that one didn't smudge as much. But there we go, so I got rid of the ends, and we did not end up wasting a huge amount of clay there. Okay, now I want to wrap this in a black and white coat. So we're going to have a sheet of white that's going to go around first, then we're going to have a sheet of black. Okay, and there we go. And I've run them out as thin as I could on my pasta machine. And so now I'm just going to grab this. I'm just going to quickly trim. bring that right up to the edge. Then take this and wrap it around and smooth as well to make sure you don't have air bubbles. Okay. And just gonna roll to see where I need to cut. There we go. And just take that and gently join. And there should not be any white visible. There we go. And I'll just smooth that seam. And then we can always just cut that off. Okay. Then just press along that, make sure that it's been smoothed onto the clay and make sure that there's no air bubbles. If there are any, let's try to push them out. If you can't, just slice and then push them out like so. You don't want any air bubbles in here. Okay, and then I'm just, let's see, do I want to reduce it? I want to reduce this a teeny bit more. So I'll just continue reducing the same way I was before. And also, when you get to this stage, you can actually just twist it gently like this, and this will get the clay moving, and it makes reducing it quite a bit easier. And just continue until it's to a size that you like. Okay, and I'm pretty happy with that size. So now I'm just going to go, and I want to make this petal a little fatter, so I'm just going and I'm squishing it in like so. And now I'm not sure if I can't remember if I mentioned it, I probably did, but we are not going to be packing this petal. We are going to cut and we're going to assemble the flower, so we are not going to be using translucent or anything like that today. So you want to make sure that this is shaped to a way that you want it before you cut it, because we're not going to be packing and shaping it then. So this is the final spot to do your shaping. So I'm just getting that petal a little bit stouter, like so. Then I'm going to put that to the side because that needs to rest quite a bit, just so that it doesn't smudge and so that it's not incredibly warm when we start to cut it. So just pop that to the side and let it rest for like half an hour, and in the meantime we can make what we're going to be putting it on. Okay, and actually before we do that, I wanted to make a centre for the cane. So I'm just going to take these, because we had some leftovers, and I'm just going to cut them all the same length, like so, and then we're going to use that to create our centre for our flower. Okay, we're just about done. Go, then just roll that up on itself like so. Doesn't have to be too specific, you just want to bundle them together like so. Then squish that so it all forms into one cane. And then just pull and reduce. And this has to be quite small for us to be able to use it. So just reduce that to probably about the same size as the individual bullseye canes were when we first had them. Okay, there we go. There you go, you can see what that looks like. So put that to the side and let that rest, and then we can make our backing. Okay, so we're going to need some pearl white, silver and primo, and I'm all using, some silver, pearl white and white Primo. And I'm using Primo here because these are nice colours and it's soft, and we're not going to be making a cane with this, so there's no need for it to be firm. Okay, and just chop that nice and small. Okay, then mix that up. Okay, and we're just going to bunch that together. Like so. Now we're kind of making a cane, I guess, but it's not really necessary. I mean, it's not necessary for the clay to be firm because we are going to be getting a lot of distortion in this, and that is perfectly fine. So just take that and form that into a square or a rectangle of some kind, and just make sure you're packing that nice and consistently. Okay, and then you can use your roller to finish up the job and to square up the ends. Like so. Okay. And I'm just going to quickly bang in these edges. Here we go. And there we go, that's our, that will be for our backing. So now I'm just going to bring over a nice thin tissue blade so that it makes it easier to cut this. And I'll just cut the first one away. There we go. And I'm just going to cut slices out of this and try to make them all the same thickness if you can. And then just pop them together like so. Okay. And then we're going to burnish that so that it's all stuck together, and that will be the backing that we use. So I use my roller because I really don't mind it distorting, and actually I kind of want to encourage it to do that. Whereas usually if you wanted to keep a even pattern and you didn't want distortion, you would most certainly not use your roller. But I do want distortion in this. Okay, there we go. And I'll pick that up, and that is ready to go when the canes are. Okay, so we're ready to start cutting our cane. So now the important thing is to just cut the end, and I'm using a nice thin blade. Just going to cut the end, there we go. And now the important thing is that you want to be cutting these as thin as you can. So something like that, along those lines. And then we can do a little bit of shaping, so I'm just pulling on those edges. Okay. And we'll do another one. Cut that. Shape it a little bit by pulling on the edges. Okay, and I'm actually going to bring over a piece of paper so that I can assemble the flower on there. So, just join your petals together and just continue doing that until you've formed a cane, or formed a flower anyway. Okay, and there we go. Now don't worry about the centre not being completely symmetrical or anything like that. What we want to do is you just want to burnish these together like so. Then we're going to get a circle cutter. Okay, and I've got my smallest camper cutter here. And I'm just going to position it in the middle. Just about there, I do believe. And cut, and just twist to make sure you get a nice clean cut. And remove. Then we're going to bring over that center cane that we'd made earlier. And just cut off that end and cut a nice clean slice. I'm going to bring over a piece of paper again, and I am going to press on it a fair bit and burnish, of course. We actually might want one that's a little larger than this. Yeah, let me get rid of that. And I'm just going to bring over this edge bit here, and this should give us something large enough. Okay, and I'm actually just going to use my fingers to gently stretch because we're not worrying about fingerprints too much at this point. Okay, and we'll burnish like so. Then bring over that cutter again, cut that, pick that up, bring over your flower again, and then just very carefully insert that. And now it's not going to fit perfectly just yet. That's why we're going to bring this over, and we are going to burnish thoroughly around that centerpiece just to get that all to bond and to sit together nicely. Okay, and that should do. There you go, got our center. Okay, I'm just going to bring this over. I'm just popping this onto a piece of paper, and I'm going to very gently pick this up off the paper. Okay, you can see it's very thin. Now I'll have a look at the back. Sometimes the back looks better, but more often than not, it's the front that looks the best. I'm just going to lay that down on top. And then we're not going to burnish it completely flat. I'm just going over very gently so that the edges are semi-beveled into the background, because I don't want to distort this too much. So I'm just being very gentle with how I burnish it. Just going around until I can't feel any edges anymore. And let's see how that looks. There we go. And I'll just continue going a little bit more until it's just blended in a bit more. Okay. Now I want to have domed edges, so I'm just going to bring over some plastic wrap or Glad wrap, however you tend to call it. Bring that over the surface, and I am attempting not to get wrinkles. Okay, now I'm going to take my second largest maxi circle cutter, and I'm just busy eyeing that. And we're going to press down, and that will have domed those edges for us. We're going to have to go back in with the cutter and cut it properly, most likely. See, it cuts through the plastic wrap quite nicely, but you do have to go back and cut it completely, because it won't cut through the plastic wrap completely. There we go. Then I want to dome that, and I'm just grabbing this bowl because I want to have the dome in. Okay, and I just want to center that. There we go. And I don't want a heavy dome, I just want a light one. Okay, and then once you've got that centered and smoothed in so that you have a nice dome, bake that for a full hour at room recommended temperature, and then we can assemble. Okay, and here it is. Now I decided to swap out the bowl because I wanted a deeper dome, since I've decided to make a ring dish out of this. I was going to make a pendant, but I thought it would look nicer as a ring dish. So anyway, there we go. So now we want to sand it. So I'm going to start with a 400 grit sandpaper, then 600, then 800, and then finally a 1200. And you want to sand the front and the back. And now the back you can go nice and heavy on because you don't have to worry about accidentally sanding away stuff. But the front you do need to be a little bit careful because if you're not, you can end up sanding through the petals. So you can go quite a bit in the middle, but when you're sanding these outside petal parts, just be careful because you can end up sanding away some of the edge. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to sand with 400, then work my way up through the grits, and then when I am done and I've sanded the back, sides and front, we can move on to the next step. Okay, and here is after we've sanded. So you can see that will have cleaned it up quite a bit, along with the back and the sides. So now we are going to take a little bit of Renaissance wax, and this is just to get the buff a little bit higher than it would without the wax. So if you don't have it, feel free to just buff without it. It is not necessary, we aren't sealing anything in, so it isn't necessary, but it does make the buff a little bit better. Okay, so I'm just making sure that I apply plenty and apply it to the edges as well. We're going to buff the entire thing and also apply it to the back. There we go. Okay, and we're ready to buff. So I'm going to start on the back. And there's the back, and you can see that it's got a nice satin sheen to it. Then we're going to do the front. And there we go, and you can see how beautifully that has buffed up. Okay, and that is basically it. Before you start using it, I would leave it an hour or two to let that Renaissance wax to dry. But yeah, that's basically it. This is your ring dish. Now of course if you wanted you could make this a pendant, but I would recommend maybe making the petals a little bit smaller before cutting them. So keep in mind that you can make pendants, you can make bowls, you could make a much bigger bowl by making multiple of these flowers and putting it on. So there's lots of ways that you could do it. So if you enjoyed this tutorial, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.